The moment he called my name, I knew something was off. It was the way he grinned, like a frat boy who'd just figured out how to work a corkscrew and thought he deserved a Nobel. We were 2 hours into the quarterly leadership summit. Half the team was jet-lagged, the other half was pretending not to text under the table. And there he was, Ryan Miller, the CEO's son, now acting COO at 32 with the emotional maturity of a half-cooked Pop-Tart, smirking in his tailored navy jacket like he'd built the company with his own 2 hands instead of stumbling in from his dad's country club. He tapped the mic with 2 fingers. As we pivot into a new era, faster builds, tighter sprints, higher valuations, I've gotta ask, he said, eyes scanning the table. Then he stopped right on me. Hey, Sophia, ever get those bonuses sorted? I felt 20 eyes turn. I kept my face neutral. Not yet, I said, calm, controlled. He raised his eyebrows like I'd confirmed a bet with himself. Huh, weird, he said with that slow, smug nod that screamed, this is foreplay for something petty. Then he moved on, blathering about cloud realignment and VC synergies like any of us cared. But I didn't hear a word after that. My ears were still ringing from the word bonuses. Not salary, not equity, bonuses, plural. As in, the 2 years of unpaid incentives they kept saying were pending recalibration. As in, the 6-figure sum I earned while building the architecture they were still licensing to enterprise clients under my original module names. I reached into my laptop bag slowly, clicked the side button on my phone. The screen blinked red, recording. I angled it just right and let it sit in my lap, just in case. Oh, and if you're listening and enjoying this story, do us a solid, hit that subscribe button and tap like. It helps the team more than you know. Most folks don't realize how much it keeps this channel going. Thanks. Ryan moved on to some slide about hypermodular middleware platform, which was just corporate word salad for we're duct taping back-end fixes and hoping nobody sues. Meanwhile, I opened my laptop, logged into my private Git repo, and checked the latest mirror sync. Still green. Full authorization logs intact. Every deployment from V2.3 onward was signed twice. Once by the company's core cert, once by mine. They never noticed the dual signature condition in the open core license I wrote myself 5 years ago. They also never noticed the clause buried in the contributor agreement. Section 9b. Retained rights shall remain the intellectual property of the original contributor in perpetuity for all forked, mirrored, and modular derivative works unless explicitly waived. Which I hadn't. Not once. By the time Ryan finished his little PowerPoint ego parade, I had 3 more downloads on my mirrored repo, all from IPs tied to mid-sized startups. I smiled, quietly, while the execs clapped like trained seals. When the summit broke for catered lunch, ahi sliders and lukewarm quinoa salad, I stayed back, watched Ryan high-five one of the junior VPs like a kid who just learned to spell revenue. He didn't look at me again. He probably thought I'd already lost. He had no idea what I still owned, and he damn sure didn't see the wire tightening. Not yet. 2 days. That's all it took. I was halfway through writing up a patch note for an overflow bug in the logging handler. Nothing serious, just a memory drip that could bottleneck a few enterprise builds, when I got the Slack message from HR. Hey, Sophia, can you swing by for a quick check-in? No smiley face, no exclamation mark. Just cold, beige HR language, a check-in, like we were about to discuss PTO rollover, not the axe swinging toward my neck. I minimized the terminal, stood up, and made the slow walk past the glass conference rooms where people pretended they didn't hear the footsteps of the condemned. No one made eye contact, not because they were cold, but because they already knew. These things have a scent, a tempo. You can smell your own execution before it happens. When I stepped into the HR office, Shannon, Director of People Ops, which is just sanitized speak for corporate guillotine operator, was waiting with a vanilla folder already laid out on the table. She didn't ask me to sit, just gestured toward the paper like she was offering a wine menu. Sophia, this is your release agreement. We're restructuring some of the engineering verticals under the new operational model and, unfortunately, your role has been identified for reduction. Identified. Like my job was a tumor. I flipped the packet open. 3 pages already signed by someone in legal. Effective immediately, 1 week of severance, laptop to be returned. All proprietary code remains the property of the firm. There it was. That line. They bolded it, like that would make it true. I looked up at Shannon and smiled. Not warmly, not politely, just empty, like all the heat had already left the room. I see. She cleared her throat. We'd appreciate if you could sign before end of day. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Crisp, white, thick paper. You could feel the weight of it before it even left my hand. My counsel asked me to pass this along, I said. She blinked like I'd just handed her a subpoena. What is it? Clause 9B, I said calmly. Contributor retained rights. I assume legal has the version I signed? She didn't answer. Just took the envelope with that weird HR half nod, the one they do when they realize this won't be a clean kill. I slid my company badge across the desk. Metal against wood. Final sound. No scene, no shouting, no tears. That's not how you win. You let them think they've erased you. While they're already writing the press release, you're just revising the terms of surrender. Quietly. I turned and walked out past the rows of succulents and sterile quotes taped to the wall like corporate affirmations. Fail fast. Iterate often. Disrupt everything. Funny. Not one of those quotes ever said, read your contributor agreements carefully. In the parking lot, I popped the trunk, dropped in my work-issued laptop, and opened my personal one. Connection tethered, repo mirror live, deployment licenses still active. Within 5 minutes, I'd updated the metadata on the core modules to reflect the change in attribution status. The moment they pushed another build, it would ping my retention clause, not block it, just flag it. A tiny legal breadcrumb, lighting the path to everything they forgot to double-check. Let them fire me. Let them pretend it was clean. The thing about code is, it remembers. And I'd spent years embedding truth where lawyers forget to look. They took my salary. They erased my desk. But I still held the keys. The first thing I did when I got home wasn't cry, wasn't scream, wasn't call a lawyer or drink or spiral. I made tea, sat down in my little office, the one with the creaky floorboard and the ugly beige walls I never got around to repainting. Fired up my workstation, dual screens, mechanical keyboard, everything still exactly how I left it the night before they decided I wasn't essential. I didn't rage, I didn't shake. I pulled up the license validation dashboard. For most companies, an open core model is a convenience. For me, it was insurance. Dual authorship verification wasn't some quirky add-on I coded for fun. It was the linchpin of the enterprise release model they'd been selling to clients for the last 4 years. Because when you fork a platform from public core to proprietary enterprise, it has to be verified by both original architects. And I was one of them. The company held the product key. I held the lock. I logged in with my personal signature key, the one I registered back in 2019 when we migrated to modular authentication. No one ever questioned it. No one read the time-stamped deployment scripts. They were just happy it worked. But every time a build went live, my key validated it. Silently, automatically. I revoked the signature for the enterprise distribution at 8:43 p.m. That didn't crash the system. I wasn't reckless. What it did was introduce a time bomb. The next build would pass through CI/CD like normal until it hit the license validation handshake. And when it did, it would stall, not break, just hang, waiting for my signature, and it wouldn't come. I opened the server logs, clicked through to the deployment tree, v2.3 onward. Every production push bore my name, burned into the metadata like a signature in wet cement. Time, date, hash match, immutable, traceable, legally binding under the dual authorship clause. Not just my code, my validation, my approval. They didn't just fire a developer, they fired a gatekeeper. Outside, it started raining. One of those soft, pointless Ohio rains that made the roads slick but didn't really do anything for the garden. I left the window open anyway, let the damp air in while I wrote the next part. I didn't tell anyone. No tweets, no Medium posts. I wasn't out for clout. I was out for correction, for the record to reflect the reality. They thought I built a system, a product, a feature set. What I built was a chain of custody, a living, breathing, self-documenting ecosystem that knew who touched what, when, and how, and most importantly, who had to bless it before it could run. It wasn't revenge, it was rebalancing. I finished the revocation script, double-checked the logs, ran the audit trail, everything lined up. No backdoors, no sneaky overrides, just silence until they tried to move without me. They'd feel it soon, not like a punch, more like a phantom limb, something gone but still aching. That's the thing about software. It doesn't care about ego, doesn't care about job titles. It just follows the logic you give it. And mine said I was still here, whether they liked it or not. I stayed quiet for 72 hours. No retaliation, no tweets, no Glassdoor reviews, no late-night rants with friends over boxed wine and bad takeout. Just observation. I watched the repo traffic, checked the pings on the revoked key, watched their QA pipeline hiccup twice, then crash into license timeouts like a forgotten coffee pot burning itself out on the back burner. One of their clients even posted a question on a dev forum, something vague about build delays and checksum mismatches. It was only a matter of time, but I wasn't going to wait around for the crash. I was going to light the detour. On the fourth morning, I made coffee strong enough to clean an engine and opened a clean branch. No corporate sludge, no unnecessary wrappers. Just the architecture in its purest form, lean, optimized, elegantly documented. I called it Open Core X. No marketing, no spin, just code. The version before the boardroom got their fingerprints all over it. Before the CTO started stuffing it with bloat to make reports look impressive. Before Ryan's idiot nephew insisted on modernizing with a JavaScript layer that looked like it was written during a Red Bull hallucination. I ran through the modules like I was restoring a classic car, stripped everything down, polished the logic, rewrote the docs line by line until it read like what it always should have been. Then I added the license. MIT-based, open, free to use, but with two conditions. Attribution must remain intact. Use is prohibited by any entity directly tied to my former employer unless written permission is granted by the original architect. Me. I didn't hide it. I put it right there at the top of the readme. Forked by original architect. Attribution mandatory, see line 7. And line 7? S. Marlowe. Code authorship and architectural lead, V2.0 plus. It felt like leaving my signature in wet concrete. I pushed the repo live under my own handle. No corporate wrapper, no NDA, just truth. Within an hour, it had 4 stars, 10 forks, a pull request from some startup out of Austin tweaking one of the pagination handlers. They added a comment at the bottom. Finally, a clean build that actually works. Bless you, whoever you are. I didn't reply. By evening, someone on Twitter posted a side-by-side benchmark between OpenCoreX and the bloated mess the company had pushed into production. My version was cleaner, leaner, faster. One reply caught my eye. Looks like the real dev finally spoke. Not in anger, not in fire, in function. The best revenge writes itself in the comments. I let the thread grow. People debated the architecture, argued over build tools, asked questions I'd been waiting years to hear. Real questions. Not the performative garbage Ryan and his cronies lobbed at me during engagement meetings while they checked their phones and complimented each other's Rolexes. It wasn't viral. Not yet. But it was moving. No rage, no lawsuits, no press, just a shortcut. A better one, that didn't require anyone to go through them. And every fork, every clone, every starred repo that carried my name was one more reminder. They didn't silence me. They just freed me. It started as a trickle. A few small startups, scrappy, underfunded, desperate for something that wouldn't choke under pressure, began using OpenCoreX. They didn't ask permission. They didn't need to. That was the beauty of it. It was clean, tested, and free. All they had to do was keep my name where it belonged. They did. One posted a GitHub issue. Can't believe this isn't the official build. Another followed with a testimonial buried in a commit note. Switched from redacted enterprise version. OpenCoreX reduced our load times by 40%. Whoever you are, thank you. I didn't reply. Not out of arrogance, but clarity. The work spoke. It always had. It just needed the right stage. By week 2, a mid-tier e-commerce platform announced they were migrating their backend to OpenCoreX. Quietly. No fanfare. But I noticed their job posting. Seeking engineers with OpenCoreX familiarity. That's when I knew it was spreading. By week 3, it had traction. I got a message request from an engineer I used to mentor, Ben, from the old days before HR's dead-eyed puppet show started. He'd left the company 6 months ago. His message was simple. "Is this you?" I didn't answer, just sent a thumbs up. He replied with a screenshot. Their product team had added OpenCoreX as a direct dependency in their staging environment. 2 hours later, the pull request went live. Inside the logs, my name sat neatly beside each module. S. Marlowe, attribution preserved. Somewhere, a little corner of the internet had started rewriting the ledger, and I didn't have to lift a finger. Then came the podcast. I wasn't listening to it live. I don't even really follow that stuff anymore. But someone forwarded me a clip. 2 guys breaking down dev trends midweek analysis. The title? OpenCoreX fork outperforms original. Architect finally credited. The host chuckled. Whoever wrote this knew exactly where the fat was and where the architecture got corrupted. It's like the code knew it had been held hostage for too long, and now it's just breathing again. The other one added, and the fact that it explicitly bans its original employer from using it, that's not just clean code. That's poetic. I closed the clip. No smile, just a slow exhale. It wasn't about taking credit anymore. It was about correcting the record, letting the truth resurface one line, one build, one commit at a time. I tracked the adoption metrics through the public package indexes. Every download pinged a metric, every pull request carried metadata, and every time someone used it, attribution ticked upward like quiet applause. Then, quietly, someone big moved. Not a press release, no loud pivot, just a change buried in the dependency tree of a Fortune 500's open changelog, a core migration, and there it was, OpenCoreX, right at the top. I checked the diffs. They didn't alter the license. They didn't strip the author credit. They knew better. I pictured Ryan reading those same logs, watching my name pop up in spaces he thought he'd walled off, places where people used to whisper about the product as if it were a miracle of engineering and never asked who built it. They were asking now. Not because I shouted, because I stayed standing while their version collapsed under its own vanity. Let them rebrand. Let them roll out v4.0 with their new modular AI enhancement layer. The real players were quietly unplugging their pipelines and switching to mine. I didn't need a mic. I had the commits. It happened on a Tuesday, which felt fitting. Tuesdays are when people try to force things, midweek energy, but not enough distance from the weekend to think clearly. The kind of day you'd try to sneak something past the system and hope no one notices. Ryan tried to push a build. Not personally, of course. He wouldn't know a git command if it showed up on a post-it in his protein powder. But someone under him, probably a junior dev pressured into salvaging his latest pivot, reintegrated OpenCoreX into their enterprise pipeline and stripped my name. They didn't fork it. They cloned it, gutted the license block, yanked line 7, removed the clause that bound the code to its author, repackaged it with their own branding, and slapped on a timestamp like that was enough to rewrite history. The thing is, this wasn't 2015. You don't get to do that quietly anymore. Every deployment handshake carried with it a signature verification, not just for version control, but for legal traceability. The system was designed to check for attribution integrity, not because I was paranoid, because I was precise. At 2:14 p.m., the first warning went off. A QA dev posted in a private thread, "Pipeline stalling, build checksum failing on module delta." 4 minutes later, another added, "Getting flagged on deployment ID 7.645A, license mismatch." Then it hit production. Their internal license bot, one they'd customized to manage open source compliance for their EU clients, pinged every dev channel in their Slack workspace. Attribution string missing, deployment blocked. 5 words. No drama, just protocol doing its job. Someone tried to manually override it. I could tell by the way the system logged 3 failed authorization attempts in under 90 seconds. Then the ticket escalated. The EU client, one of their biggest, caught wind. Not because of the failure itself, but because the compliance checker on their side flagged the update as a potential license breach. The language in their procurement contract was brutal. Any trace of copyright infringement triggered automatic internal review, the kind that involves lawyers. By 3 Waro, their insurer had called. Not a courtesy check-in, not a friendly heads up, a recorded call. Compliance audit triggered. Risk pool adjustment pending. That's when I got the email. Not from Ryan, from their legal team. Cold, formal, impersonal. Subject: clarification regarding authorship on recent modules. No apology, no admission, just a question. Would you be open to discussing a clean license agreement to ensure uninterrupted deployment continuity? I didn't reply. Instead, I watched their issue tracker overflow with panic. One dev asked if they could just roll back to the last safe commit. Another said, that was OpenCoreX. Everything else crashes under load. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smirk. I just sat in my office with the rain tapping the window again and thought about the moment they handed me that release letter. How sure they were. How final it seemed. They thought they were erasing me. All they did was disable their own foundation. Not because I sabotaged it, not because I buried a kill switch, but because I respected the code more than they ever did. It refused to lie. The trap wasn't revenge. It wasn't emotional. It was built into the logic. And now it was just executing. The second email was less subtle. No vague subject lines, no legalese pretending this was some abstract misunderstanding. Just urgent license negotiation terms, sent from the desk of their new acting general counsel, which told me two things. Someone had either quit or been strategically repositioned since Tuesday's implosion. The legal handoff always comes fast when the insurance company starts asking questions no one can answer without stuttering. I opened the attachment. 3 pages, full of language that reeked of desperation trying to dress itself up as due diligence. They were offering retroactive licensing for all builds post V2.3, full indemnity clauses, plus a mid-6-figure sum for transitional alignment. But the kicker was in bold halfway through. We propose exclusive rights to deploy, modify, and resell derivatives of the OpenCoreX framework. Exclusive. They wanted to lock the door they'd once shoved me through, and now they were willing to pay for the keys. I sat back in my chair, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. Let the silence settle. Let the weight of the moment just sit there. This wasn't vindication, not really. It was a transaction. But this time, I was the one writing the terms. I opened a blank doc, wrote exactly what needed to be said. No more, no less. 1 page, 3 bullet points. License terms: global, non-exclusive, irrevocable, and perpetual. Usage permitted under audit-ready attribution only. Attribution: all deployments must retain authorship declaration visibly within documentation and metadata. No concealment, no substitution. Financial consideration: one-time flat fee. No royalty, no equity, but no negotiations. Amount attached. I signed it. S. Marlowe. The woman they called disposable. I didn't pad it with fluff. I didn't offer a slide deck. I didn't write a cover note thanking them for reconnecting. I attached the PDF, titled it Final Terms R. Marlowe, and sent it with a subject line that said everything I needed to. Access conditional upon signature. No exclamation point. No smiley face. 5 minutes later, their VP of Finance, someone I hadn't heard from in over a year, replied directly. We'd like to proceed. Please forward payment instructions. And just like that, the leverage shifted. Not with a slam of a boardroom table, not with a dramatic courtroom monologue, but in 1 page, 3 bullet points, all binding. I became the gatekeeper they thought they'd discarded. They made me beg for bonuses. Now they paid for permission. I didn't gloat. Didn't text old co-workers with an "I told you so." I just opened the logs, updated the attribution timestamp, and watched as their deployment reauthorized within 3 minutes of processing payment. They were back online, but they'd never be independent again. And I didn't have to walk through their door, because now I was the door. They tried to bluff their way through it. The relicence agreement gave them back-end access, sure, but not trust. Not the kind you need when you're trying to convince a room full of investors that you're still cutting edge after hemorrhaging your lead architect and crawling back under a new name. They scheduled the product relaunch anyway. Big press push, rebranded UI, a whole narrative about next-gen intelligence pipelines. The kind of stuff that looks good on a keynote slide but dies the moment someone runs actual code. Their flagship demo was set for a Tuesday morning with a major European logistics firm, one of those clients who cared more about compliance and continuity than hype. It didn't go well. Midway through the session, their rep launched into a walkthrough of the new platform. Polished, slick, all buzzwords and bravado. And then, right in the middle of a dynamic analytics preview, the screen stuttered, hung, then crashed. A red message appeared like a bloodstain across the terminal. Authorization key revoked by original author. There was silence. One of those tight, airless silences where everyone pretends not to panic, but you can feel the room sinking. Someone off-screen whispered, "Is this part of the demo?" It wasn't. The API call had triggered a secondary validation layer they'd forgotten still ran on a per-usage token. Tokens that expired unless renewed under the full license, which they hadn't. Because they assumed the flat fee covered everything. It didn't. They wanted control. I gave them a lease, not ownership, not autonomy, just access, with very specific walls. I watched the demo in real time, streamed by someone who didn't know I was watching. The error code flashed, the rep blanched, and the client quietly said, "We'll circle back." They wouldn't. By the end of the day, two smaller competitors had posted side-by-side performance breakdowns. Both were using OpenCoreX. Both were faster. Both credited me directly in their About pages. Investors noticed. I knew because one of them, an old contact who'd ghosted me after my firing, reached out with a single line. "Are you still licensing independently?" Translation. Their confidence was cracking. And then came the board call. I didn't hear the whole thing, but someone leaked a snippet, a clip from the internal Zoom shared like gossip over Slack and back channels. One voice, low and tired, muttered, "Who let him walk?" They didn't even get my pronouns right. Didn't matter. What mattered was that the board finally saw it. The scaffolding they'd leaned on wasn't some faceless architecture team or trendy new CTO. It was me, the woman they fired, the name they scrubbed, the author they pretended never existed. I didn't celebrate, just opened the logs, verified the token had expired cleanly. No bugs, no drama. The system had done exactly what I built it to do, enforce attribution. I closed the laptop, let the silence return. It was never about bringing them down. It was about making sure the next time someone asked who built the foundation. They didn't hesitate to say my name. They signed on a Thursday. No announcement, no ceremony, just a quiet DocuSign notification in my inbox. All parties have completed execution. Attached was the updated contract. 4 pages. The first outlined licensing rights, expanded globally, irrevocable, and fully auditable. The second confirmed my authorship would be embedded permanently across all future builds, visible in both public documentation and private repositories. The third covered retroactive bonus compensation, adjusted for inflation and paid in a single wire transfer. The fourth? A clean clause, no contestation, no non-disparagement. They weren't buying silence. They were acknowledging truth. No stock options, no title, no ceremonial welcome back. I didn't want any of it. Titles come and go, stocks fluctuate, truth endures. The wire hit that afternoon. It wasn't about the number, though it was satisfying, just enough to feel surgical. Not a windfall, a correction. I didn't reply to the GC's closing note. "We appreciate your cooperation." There was nothing cooperative about it. Cooperation implies mutual interest. This was leverage, built line by line, module by module, while they were too busy polishing pitch decks to notice the foundation was alive and keeping score. I reopened the site they'd rebuilt, now live again after weeks of downtime and marketing damage control. It looked the same on the surface, sleek, modern, glossy, but I knew where to look. I opened the dev console, popped into the metadata, and found it instantly. Build signature S. Marlowe. Then I scrolled to the bottom corner of the landing page, beneath the legal links and cookie disclaimers. There, in quiet gray text, was the sentence that changed everything. Powered by S. Marlowe, original architect. Not founder, not consultant, architect. That word meant something. They could hire new devs, buy new code, rebrand 10 more times, but they couldn't erase the truth now. Not from the code base, not from the logs, not from the clients who now demanded the name behind the system before signing anything. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I just watched the cursor blink, then close the window. They tried to cut me out. I versioned them out. Quietly. Permanently. They withheld 2 years of bonuses. I rewrote the ledger, with my name in every build.